Hi everyone. So as you know, or if you haven't caught my email, this week's session is a bit different. I'll be posting these videos online, and what we'll be doing this week is that I'll be showing you how to run descriptive statistics in R and also inferential statistical tests like t-tests, correlation, and between subjects ANOVA and across models. We'll also look at a bit on how to do power analysis for each of those tests. What we'll do next week then is we'll look at mediation and moderation, linear regression, and also repeated measures, one-way repeated measures ANOVA. And for this session, and also a little bit next session, it's more of a reference guide in the sense that I'm not here to teach the statistical techniques or the ideas behind each of these tests, but to show you the information and the code that exists that will enable you to run each of these tests, right? What we'll do in this particular, the session will be split up into multiple videos, so that if you're just interested in running a one-way ANOVA between subjects, you can go to that video and follow along. What this particular video will do is just set up our working environment in R, so set up a folder, set up an R script, load in our packages, and set our working directory, and load in our data files. So before you watch any of the other videos, just make sure you follow along with the steps in these videos, so that everything else will work as it should. Okay, so I have my RStudio opened, or PositCloud, and the first thing I want to do, I've already done it, is just create a folder for this week. So I already have this, but it'd be something like create a new folder, and I'm just going to call it week 7. In that folder then, I've already loaded in two data files. They're both in Microsoft Teams. Psycho.sav, that is a data file from SPSS, and wellbeing.csv, which is a comma separated value data set, and we'll be using these to run our kind of inferential and descriptive analysis. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just set up a script in R, and I'm going to call this one, there will be multiple scripts, but I'm going to call this one setup. So setting up, setup. I'm going to save it as O1 setup. And the first thing I'm going to do is, actually before we do anything else, one thing I haven't showed you so far is there's what would you say, kind of hygienic things that we can do to ensure that we don't run anything inaccurately. And that is that every so often, if you're working on a new project, that you clean your environment. And the environment is just that. We've created data sets, we have variables in here, we have functions that maybe we created, and it's good every so often just to clean that out, because if I was running analysis and I created another data frame called df, it might be unclear which one is actually being used. So to do this, I can go up to the environment and click the sweeping brush. It will ask me, are you sure you want to remove all objects? This option can't be undone. I click yes. And then another good thing after that would just be click session and restart R. And that kind of gives you a blank new clean slate in R. Okay, so that's just a bit of hygienic matters. The next thing I'm going to do is set my working directory, and I want to set it to week 7. So I click session, set working directory, choose directory, week 7. That's there. I can check it down here by typing get wd, and that's done correctly. So I'll be able to load these files in pretty straightforwardly. So what I'm going to do first thing before I do that, there's several packages that we're going to use in this session. So I'm going to load in our packages, and I'm just using a comment here just to orient my script. It just makes it clean and easier to read, especially if someone else was to read it or view it. And there's a few packages we're going to load in. First one is library JMV. This is a package from Jamovi. It's an open source statistical software built on R, but it's really useful for running descriptive statistics. So this will help us run descriptive statistics. I'm just putting in this comment here because I might come back to this in a few months' time if I was running analysis and forget what actually the JMV package does. Or someone else might look at my script and never seen the JMV package. The next one I'm going to load in is PRW, it's kind of short for power, and this will enable us to conduct power analysis. I'm going to load in Tidyverse, which we've been using in the last few weeks, and this will just help us clean data sets if we need to. And I'm going to load in a package called Haven, and this just helps us import SPSS data. Now I'm going to run all these now and just see if they're all installed. You can see here it stopped. I get an error in library. There's no package called PWR. You probably will get it with the library JMV as well. All you have to do is, if you get this error, is you type in install packages down the console. In parentheses you put quotation marks and you type in the package name. So that will install PWR power onto my RStudio. Now if I press library, if I run this code, it runs correctly. So that's been loaded in. I'm going to load in Tidyverse. That's loaded in correctly. And I'm going to load in Haven. And that's loaded in correctly. Again, if you do get the error message, there is no package called whatever. You just have to install packages first. So remember to use install packages in the console if they do not load. The reason I do install packages in the console and not in the script is just, again, it's just kind of data clean, or it's good hygienic manners, so that if you give your script to someone else, they don't install something by accident that they may not want on their computer. Okay, so that's loading our packages. The next thing I want to do is load in our data sets. So we have two. So I'm going to load in the well-being data set, and I'm going to call that the, let's say, well-be df. Actually, no. I'll give it a full name, well-being df. And to do that, we can use a function called readCSV. It's called readCSV because it's a CSV file. And I just type in wellbeing.csv. Press run, and that loads it up here. The next thing I can do is load in our psycho data set. So I'm going to say psycho df. I'm going to, in this case, it's read SAV. And again, we just type in the name, psycho.sav. We always put in the extension, and we read that in. And now our two data sets have been imported into R. So if I click up here, it shows me psychodf dataset. What happens here, we had collected data on participants' age, gender, the order in which they took 3 drugs, and their level of neuroticism after each drug. In the well-being dataset, what we have is participants' ID, their gender, what condition they're in, no caffeine. It was measuring no caffeine versus low caffeine versus high caffeine, their age, their level of pain experience, their level of fatigue, their level of depression, and their level of well-being. Okay, so that is loading in our dataset. We're kind of set up here to run our descriptive inferential analysis, which I'll do in the next video. Just one thing to note is that if neither of these two functions have worked, so if I just, for example, do this, just get an error message. If it says it cannot open file and well-being whatever is not in no such file or directory, just make sure you've set up your working directory correctly. Because if they're in here, then they should be able to be read in here. Okay, so I'll end this video now. In the next video, we'll look at running descriptive statistics on the well-being dataset.